Hello. In true Lydia fashion, taking a drink after I started the video. But I just watched a video that was talking about how we are all living in our answered prayers to some degree. And I guess I haven't really thought about it completely, in the sense of I haven't thought about if everybody's living in their answered prayers. I can't say that for everybody, but it did make me want to talk more about how that's true for me. Because I am living in my answered prayers, and even though I'm very in this time in my life, I'm pretty I don't know, I'm a little nervous because of our situation, and it's been a whole process of having to deal with my anxiety while trying to move and not knowing where we're living, not knowing where we're going to be going next. But sometimes I do have to stop and remind myself that I am currently living in my answered prayers to such a high degree, actually, to such a powerful extent. And when I do think about that, it does tend to calm my nerves a lot. So I wanted to share my story more, because I talk about the fact that I dealt with toxic mold for years on my channels, on my channel, my TikTok, my everything. I talk about that a lot. And that's, it's a big part of my story, and that is a huge part of this as well, what I'm going to be talking about. So my mom and I were both in toxic mold for 4 years. It was a house that had water damage, and it was just a lot to try to get somebody to remove it or fix it or look at it. It was, the entire process of it was painstakingly difficult to have anybody help us with. And while we were trying to fix the issue, trying to, from our point of view, because we had just moved into this house and then the water damage started. And so it was a lot of us trying to figure out what the issue was, and then how to do things to repair it or fix it or whatever. Sorry, I'm distracting my dog with Turkey, because there's a lot of noises outside today that she finds bothersome. A lot of really close noises. And also, it's so bizarre, but we have a pond very near us, and it's so crazy because our landlord has Pekin ducks, and my dog does not mind the Pekin ducks at all. She can tell when they're quacking. She doesn't mind them. But then she's really bothered by mallards, which she wasn't even bothered by them in the beginning, but we had walked outside to let her out to the bathroom while a mallard was coming around the corner. This happened late last summer, and the duck felt threatened because she was there with her babies and was about to attack Sophie. So ever since then, she's been very nervous when she hears their quacking. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just distracting her if you guys are kind of wondering why I'm reaching down, and I was distracted there for a second. But yeah, so we were in this environment, and as you can imagine, we're trying to deal with all of that. We were trying to deal with like all of the logistics of trying to get rid of it. At the same time, we were getting worse and worse and worse, very, very fast, it was very progressive, and it was scary. And when I say scary, I mean, I can't even describe in words how hellish it was. It was hell on earth. And I've talked about this so many times about how I feel currently like I am living in this afterlife, because it was 4 years, but like, I really only realized that it was 4 years after I had gotten out, because while I was in it, it felt like I was in prison for 10 years or so. It was wild. And that was every single day, us trying to figure out ways to both heal and get rid of it, and thinking of ways potentially out. Maybe, do we move? Do we try fixing this? What do we do? It was just that. And it was, how do I escape? How do I escape? And it was mental torment for a very, very, very long time. It was terrible. And terrible is an understatement to such a high degree. Like, I really can't express enough how horrific it was. And to get into some of my symptoms, our symptoms, because my mom and I, it was so bizarre. It was bizarre, but very comforting to have somebody go through it with us, or have each other through this situation, because we both experienced the exact same symptoms. Well, there was like a few symptoms that maybe one of us had that the other one didn't, but almost every symptom was mirrored. We were gaining weight rapidly. And now, I mean, like, we would go to the doctors maybe every 2 weeks to a month, and every single time it was like 20 pounds, 30 pounds. It was insane, until, 100 pounds later, here I am. 100 pounds later, there my mom is. That's just what it was. And because the stress on our bodies, the pressure, the stress on our bodies was putting our adrenals in overdrive. And now that I'm completely healed, that's really the only thing that lingers, is the stress on my adrenals. But that's a whole other story. But I was in that, and the weight gain was not nearly the worst symptom. It's just, I think, the most visible symptom that we had gone through, but not nearly the worst. The worst, I think, was the fatigue, just because, and people, fatigue is one of these things in these communities where it's so brushed off. And it's like, people don't understand how fatigue is literally life. Fatigue is the difference between life and like living a life and living no life. It's the difference between being able to work for food and being homeless. Like, fatigue is literally your energy. It is literally everything that encompasses energy. People don't understand that. They think, oh, you're sleepy, are you? And it's like, actually, that's such an understatement to what fatigue is. And so often people who experience fatigue, and this was my experience, is they say that you're wired but tired, okay? Because even though you're so exhausted, see, for me and my mom, we became so incredibly exhausted physically that we were getting out of breath, getting up from our chairs to go to the bathroom. Out of breath to the point where I can't catch my breath. I'm this is very TMI, but I would use all my strength to get up to go to the bathroom. I'd make it up the stairs to go to the bathroom, and that felt like, oh my gosh, I need to sit. And then I would catch my breath while I was on the toilet, like literally, and I would just sob. If I had any tears left to cry, I would sob, just sobbing tears, because it's like, wow, that took everything out of me, and I can't even fathom how to make the next steps to get out of this situation, let alone up the stairs, let alone to go into the kitchen a couple steps to make my food. The amount of times that I would cry just trying to get up to get into the kitchen, let alone to even fathom of what to make for my meal. It was just horrendous. But I was also wired but tired, so I'd be exhausted in that sense all day long. And this is what happens when you're exhausted all day long and you are forced to do nothing all day long. I know to some people they think like, oh, that's like some fairy tale. Oh, sure, you have to take a vacation and do nothing all day long. But I'm sorry, you'd have to be a literal insane person to want to do nothing all day long for years. You'd have to be literally cuckoo, because human beings are not meant for that. Sorry. I know I'm a little sharp about that, but there's a lot of people when I say these things who think it's a joke, who think like, oh, you were tired doing nothing all day, were you? Okay, well, I got a 9 to 5, so. And it's like, yeah, wouldn't it be nice to work a 9 to 5? Wouldn't it be nice to afford food when I was sick? Just a lot of these comments come up when you're ill, a lot of snarkiness. And it makes you like very defensive about these things. But anyway, that's what it would be like, is like I would spend all day just trying to survive energy wise and in general. And when you're living in that all day, every day, then at night, because this is like a human being, the thing about humans is that we need to be busy throughout our days, so that way at night our cortisol will drop and our bodies are able to relax. If we spend all day at this plateau, it messes with our highs and lows of cortisol, so we don't rise and fall when we should rise and fall. So I ended up just at night having severe insomnia, and eventually my mom and I did a cortisol test, and the results were wild. They were wild, because at the times when other people are up during the day, our cortisol had tanked. That means our body physically could not bear getting up at that time. Could not bear it. It felt like we were working against our bodies to be up at rising hours. And then hours of the night was when we would start to get a slight spike. So that's why we would experience this plateau of just this all night long. And that was our life for years and years and years. And our body aches, that was another symptom, severe body aches. It felt like we were experiencing a flu the entire 4 years. It was our entire bodies ached. That also caused us to cry when we got up. Headaches, our immune system was shot, absolutely. Going into public was terrifying. Truly, because it was like, I knew being around a lot of people would send my immune system to plummet even more. And it's wild because I'm notoriously clean. I'm a clean freak, as people would call it, to a degree. And for the first time in my life, I had ever gotten pink eye, and it wasn't just, I'd gotten it several times, especially towards the end of our time living in toxic mold, because my immune system was so low that like literally anything would cause an infection to my eye. So it was just, and our allergies were so bad. Mucus, like all the time, just mucusy. I always felt like I was going through the like flu symptoms, but I also always felt like I was like on the brink of a cold. Like, you know, when you feel that like tenseness in your throat, and it's just like always, it was always hanging there. And oh, come here, Sophie. Lay down. Lay down. Come on. There you go. She does not like those ducks. Sorry about her bark. I love my dog dearly. She does have one of the worst barks in the world. And I don't discourage her from barking while playing, but I do discourage her from barking at ducks. Which is a new thing for her. She never barked at ducks before. And she doesn't, it's weird because she doesn't bark at like squirrels or anything like that. She also doesn't acknowledge any dogs ever. And when we're on walks, I don't know, she's good. I don't need to like hype her up. I don't need to hype her up just to like make it seem like, you know, she barks at ducks, at these mallards. It's okay. Anyway, but yeah, that was our life for a long time, a very long time. And no, come on, sit. Good girl. Okay. And it was really rough, obviously. Going through all of that, and it was a constant, like, in my head all the time, 24/7. I mean, even when I slept, what was running through my mind was, how do I get out? How do I get out? How do I get out? And we were thinking of insane ideas, you know, just wild, anything. We were like, can we be homeless? Like, how do we be homeless? How can we live? And at that point, it started to become, I started to wonder if I'd ever even heal at all. I started to wonder if that was even possible for me. My mom and I both were like, is this even possible for us to ever work, ever heal, ever be able to go on hikes again? Because we lived for hikes. We're hiking people. We're nature people. And we were just so held back from all of that we wondered if we would ever do it again, if we would ever be able to do that again. And it was really sad. And I think for a long time I told myself that I wouldn't be able to. And our relationship with Yahweh, God, through this process only strengthened. Because when you're that low and you are left with nothing and no one, I mean, my mom and I literally only had each other through that. We were forced to take a look at ourselves and where we were in life and our relationship with Yahweh and even our past and what led us to this point. And we both began to pray. And then we started to watch more videos about casting things out in the name of Yeshua. And as we began to learn and research how to heal and also how to heal mentally and all of that, we started seeing information about praying in faith. And that when you pray for something, you you've got to pray in faith that he will do it for you, because if it is his will, it will be done. And that even when we pray, we shouldn't be continually repeating, if it's in your will, if it's in your will, because if we're in alignment with him, it is in his will. And so I just had to pray in faith and work on that, on what that meant to pray in faith and what that meant to even have faith that I could be healed. And reading a lot of passages about how, when Yeshua, Jesus, had healed people. And even though it was so hard being in that to ever believe that I could heal, it was so difficult. Yahweh really strengthened up my faith and had me exercise that more and more, that it could be done. And I even got to the point towards the end where I started to pray for specific things that I wanted. And that was insane. That was like wild and unfathomable to start to do, because it's like, well, I have nothing, and I've been thinking about what that might be like to be homeless, let alone praying for things that I want. It's like I had to make that switch from only praying to Yahweh for what I want and starting to pray for, scratch it. I had to get out of the mind frame of just praying to him for what I need. Because that's what I was doing for so long. If I could just get this, if I could just get that loaf of bread, if I could just get enough food, if I could just make it another day. And I started to be like, no. We've done that. And yes, he has provided just that, because I just asked for that. Why don't I try exercising that faith within me and pray for something more? Have enough faith to pray for more. Pray for what I want. And in that, believing that Yahweh is a good Father, that he wants good for us. And knowing that, okay, if he's a good Father and he wants good for us, then he's not going to condemn me for asking for more. Then instead, he's probably celebrating that I'm asking for more. And so that's what I started doing, is I started praying for more. Okay, all right. And then I would like start to pray for what I wanted and just say, well, ideally, this is what I would want. Yahweh, please make this happen. Make this happen. And I know you will. And so I prayed that I'd be completely healed. Completely healed. That I'd be able to go on hikes again. That I'd have so much energy. That I'd be able to walk for hours and hours. Hiking for hours and hours. That even in the middle of the summer, I'd be able to do that. Because I was very, very sensitive to temperature as well. That I'd be able to hold a conversation with people, because I could not hold a conversation with somebody. I couldn't. I could barely even form thoughts. Truly. My thoughts were not coherent. There were many days where I didn't speak a single word. Not a single word was said. And there would be, a long time, stretches of years before I had talked to anybody beside my mom. And same for my mom. Long stretches of times where she hadn't talked to anybody except for me, because we were just so extremely sick that leaving our house, even going to the grocery store, was a big ordeal. A big ordeal. And I prayed that I'd be able to have conversations. I prayed that I'd be able to do things creatively again. Writing, making YouTube videos. I did this when I was much younger. I made YouTube videos when I was like an early teenager. And I couldn't even form thoughts to be able to make a video. And here I am being able to do this. And this is a miracle. this is a miracle. And I prayed that we would be able to somehow find a small cottage, small enough for just us to be able to take care of, because we couldn't manage a lot. A place that was secluded from people, because we wanted to just heal and relax. We didn't want to deal with the neighbors. We didn't want to deal with loud sounds that would scare us and cause us fear. I said, ideally, I would love a pond and a river, so that way even on my worst days where I just couldn't fathom getting outside, I would be able to sit outside and watch that river. And I prayed for ducks, because I love ducks. And when I prayed that, I thought that was wild to pray, because all of that is insane to pray when you have nothing. When you are facing possible homelessness, when you are so severely ill. And before long, he gave us the knowledge. He presented us with knowledge that helped us to heal just a little bit, to get to one step, which helped us heal enough to move our things, pack up and move. The things to take, the things to do, the steps, the actions to take to move forward. And we were looking everywhere, just saying, Yahweh, just guide us. Just guide us where you want us to go. We'll apply to places. We will do all the necessary steps. You take care of the rest. We know that you'll guide us to the perfect place. And where did he guide us? He guided us to a small cottage. Secluded. But it's funny because we asked secluded but close to town, because to think of having to drive excessive amounts to get our groceries also sounded horrendous. And that's what we got. A cottage, secluded, close to town. There's a river, a pond, and ducks. And we could afford it. He gave us the money from the house that we sold to be able to afford it. And I can't even express to you guys how rare a place like this is. Truly. You know, that was my hope. That was my, like, if I could have it in my way. See that my heart is good, Father. This is what I would want. And he gave me every last thing on the list. Every last thing, down to it's like, you know, mallards in general is one thing, you know, that's like naturally occurring, but then our landlord had Pekin ducks that she puts in the pond, and I just think that was Yahweh's sign, like, yep, even the ducks were meant for you. And it's been a blessing. It's been a huge blessing. Every last thing was on. Last thing that was on my list came true. Everything. Even though at the time it seemed unfathomable, because truly, where do you find a house to rent? You know, at the time that wasn't very common. There was a lot of, you know, we applied to a lot of apartments, that's for sure. And, you know, and before that, when I actually was praying for all this stuff, like I didn't even know if I could sell my house. I didn't even know that that was even a possibility, because I was so ill that selling our house, moving, packing was like climbing a mountain to me. I just could not understand how that would be possible. And he gave us the knowledge. Okay? Do this and you'll heal a little bit more. Do this and you will heal a little bit more. And then once you are here and got everything you asked for, then you will heal completely. And my energy level is fantastic. I mean, I am completely healed besides my weight. And my weight is, I would say, more so unrelated to the mold and more related just to my adrenals and overall personal anxieties. But mold related things, none. No symptoms. Can you even believe that? Sometimes I think about that. I'm like, I can't even fathom that, because it felt like eternity, and it felt like that was my destiny. It felt like that was my fate. But it wasn't. And it's wild. And so when I sit here, again, in an unknown situation, because I don't know where I'm going to be moving next. Our money ran out. You know, we didn't get excessive amounts of money. We lived in a place where houses didn't sell for a lot at the time that we sold it. It was exactly what we needed for this period of time that we were meant to heal. And now I don't know where we're going, you know, and that can be a little intimidating. But any time now that I'm intimidated, it's like, I'm glad that I have that to remind myself. And I encourage any one of you to look back in your memories and remind yourself of how you are living to some degree, to some extent. The prayer that you prayed, that came true. You are living in your prayers right now. You are living in that. You were living in something that felt impossible at one point, but came true. And so just keep praying in faith. It's a hard thing to remember, even though, why wouldn't I when he's given me all this? But we're human and we forget and we go back to our old ways of being like fearful, you know? But he helps us get out of that, out of those loops. He breaks that for us. So this is my little testimony. And I hope it was a blessing to you. Have a wonderful day.